Hello and welcome to another Pauper video. Today we are going deep looking at the decks of the week. This video is going to cover the Magic Online metagame for all the Pauper trophies in the leagues. Check out a bunch of spice, go over the Pauper challenges, and then an additional discussion to close it out, which may or may not have some people flaming me. Before we get into it, check out cardmarket.com, the largest seller of Magic the Gathering cards in Europe. Also, I've got sideboard guides on patreon.com/calicais, and you can get early access to videos on the YouTube membership. So let's dive into the details. What happened this week? Well, in Magic Online, we had another slight dip in trophies at 122 trophies, with most of them being kind of the top few decks. Mono Red at 15 trophies, then Affinity also at 15 trophies. We had Jund Glee at 14, so just barely not tied with the top. Actually, Mono Red had a few days where it didn't even do very well. Like, on the whole, I guess it was put down by the format a little bit. In fourth place was Mono Blue Fae, which tends to have a pretty good matchup against the Mono Red deck, so I think that could have potentially pushed them down. And we also see White Weenie here, which does prey on the Mono Red. Then behind White Weenie is Black Green Glee, a bunch of dredge decks, including one very, very spicy dredge deck. And then we have Dimir Terror and Izzet Terror. People seem to be moving off of Mono Blue Terror overall. And the Dimir Terrors seem to be going towards 4 Terror, 4 Snacker, and then Murmuring Mystic or Angler, depending on what you want to play. So that's an interesting change into the build. Then we have Madness Burn, Walls. 4 Walls was pretty cool to see. Some number of Dimir Fae, and it's dropping off from there, with Jund Wildfire still being present in the metagame, but not quite as high, and then Gruul Ramp basically non-existent at this point. We have a couple of that Teamer control deck. Looks like a Flickertron, which I have to pull up, and then we have a few one-ofs, which was nice. So this is the metagame as it appears in the sorted version, basically not combining any of the archetypes. If we go down and we combine some of the archetypes, pretty much just the Glee decks, we have Glee decks, which I've just labeled it incorrectly, but Glee at 17.2% of the trophies, then Mono Red and Affinity. So 3 decks taking up over 40% of the metagame. And by decks, I mean archetypes. And then White Weenie and Mono Blue Fae below it. And now if we go even more combined, which I don't necessarily think is correct, but it's interesting to see, if you combine every deck playing Tolarian Terror, so Dimir Terror, Mono Blue Terror, and Blue Red Terror, so all of these rely on having a big threat and protecting it to get in. Now we have 4 archetypes, or like macro archetypes, covering over half of the metagame. I'm not sure if combining the Terror decks makes that much sense, because the Dimir and Mono Blue do play very similarly, but the Blue Red Terror does not. And also the Teamer Control plays Terror, so it's a little bit more than this. But you can see that on the whole, the metagame is comprised of Glee as an archetype, Mono Red, which stands by itself, the Affinity, and then people using Terror to get the job done. There's a lot of things going on behind it, but none of these can really stand up to those 4 most powerful things to be doing, I think, in the format. So in the Pauper challenges, we have Grixis Affinity on top, Red Koldotha in second, Mono Blue Fae rising quite a bit after Skura's performance in Pauper Get In, and pretty good performance from Mono Blue Fae over the last week or two. Then we have Dredge, which is cool, and Dimir Terror. Looks like Jund Broodscale got hammered, and Golgari Broodscale as well, so they did not perform whatsoever in this Pauper challenge. Mono Blue Fae can be pretty tough, so maybe the rise in that pushed it down a little bit. Plus, Grixis Affinity is good at shoving people into the dirt. Let's check out some of the sweet spice from the Magic Online leagues before we get into the format discussion. So the first one I wanted to look at was another copy of Blue Red Green. So this is Teamer Terror, so not Blue Red Terror, and looks like they are not playing Terror whatsoever. That's pretty cool. They're playing just the Teamer Control with Writhing Chrysalis as their big beater and no Terrors. Nice. Love to see it. So that's cool. It's the same deck. They're splashing for Pulse of Marasa and Riding Chrysalis with a campfire to loop the deck. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Next one is Blue Black by Helldude. This is what I was talking about with the Dimir Terror decks not playing any number of anglers mostly. So they have 4 Terror and then 2 Murmuring Mystic with 4 Sneaky Snacker. And Sneaky Snacker is just so good in these kinds of decks with infinite recursion, really helping against things like edicts, but also just blocking and getting in. They've got not too much else. And really the reason that you want to play the black is mostly comes down to Snuff Out. You can see that this person is not even playing any number of the life gain spell. That's pretty wild. They have 4 Blue Blast and 4 Hydroblast instead. Nice. They really want to get it there. Now I wanted to cover this Jund broodscale. I think Mickey Barron is the trophy leader. I'm not really sure. I could verify that. Let's go over here. Yep, they are the trophy leader. So they've been crushing with this Jund Glee deck, playing 3 Duress, 3 Safekeeping, and 3 Snuff Out in the main deck. Which, when you're playing into the mirror, Snuff Out is extremely good. It really trashes people, and because they're not expecting it to occur, so you get really hammered by it. They have 4 Deadly Dispute, 3 Insight, 3 Rumble, and then 4 Wellspring, 3 Chromatic Star. And they're not playing the Wildfire mana base. There we go. Instead, they're playing Manor Gate. So they have all untapped lands with 4 Manor Gate, which is, I think, a pretty good way to do it. And their win condition... they've cut win conditions entirely. That is cool. Okay. So they have no way to force through a main deck curse. They have 3 Troublemaker Oofs in the sideboard. Well, I think I can get behind this a little bit. Pyroblast is pretty good for the blue decks, and then they have the Weatherstorm Breath Weapon for your red decks. Only 1 more Snuff Out in the sideboard because they're in the main deck. Neat. I think there's a... Oh, no, wait, never mind. They have the 2 Nightblades. What was I talking about? I was looking for the makeshift munitions, but the 2 Nightblades here. Okay. You could even maybe just cut the Nightblades and not hyper combo people and just go like max disruption. But then, like I said, you are weak to them having potentially a curse in their main deck. Okay, we're moving on. So then I'm covering my own trophy because I don't know if everybody's seen Altertron, but I really enjoy playing it. This deck relies on Mirror Retriever, returning a Mirror Retriever, because when it dies, it returns another artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. You can cost reduce it with Foundry Inspector, and then make infinite mana by sacrificing it over and over with Ashnod's Altar. Or if you don't have a Foundry Inspector in play and you have a Golem Foundry in play, looping that over and over puts counters on the Golem Foundry, giving you infinite golems and infinite mana that way, which you can filter in your deck through the Energy Refractor to just do whatever you want, paying them out with makeshift munitions and paper, or you just use the Blood Fountain to loop through your deck and find your win condition and win the game. I find this is generally well positioned against terror decks and burn decks, as well as affinity. So the one thing that you're worried about is mostly Glee, which is why I have Seal of Doom in the sideboard, and then a couple of scatter shots, mostly because I ran into Mono Blue Fae a couple times, and it can deal with Glee. People always asking me about the Stream of Thought. This is a Magic Online thing, so if you want to beat Weather the Storm on Magic Online, you basically need to mill them, because it's not really possible to force the Weather the Storm with the makeshift munitions and then make enough mana to actually makeshift munitions kill them again. So moving on, there's an Orzhov aggro is how it's labeled, but this is essentially White Weenie, and that's how I labeled it in my sheet. It's White Weenie splashing for Thorn of the Black Rose, which I was not expecting, 1 Cast Down and 1 Suffocating Fumes. So essentially they wanted to go up on Thraben Charm, so they've added a Cast Down, and then they have Fumes to sweep, I guess, for the 1/1s. And they have Snowfield Sinkhole to search up with their Eagles of the North, which is a nice synergy, so that they can continue to have, no, they don't have the pumps land, and they have Snuff Outs in the main deck, plus Trespasser's Curse. So they are trying to over-prepare for Glee, it seems. And that just seems to be how everybody's working it. This Poison Storm is really awesome because it looks like they've taken a list that is mine or similar to mine with 2 snaps in the main deck with a Prologue Defy Recess. Yeah, so they replaced 1 snap from my list with a Prologue, which does make sense. They have, yep, it's exactly the same. Nice. I love to see it. Poison Storm is sweet. You put a poison counter on your opponent and then you proliferate onto your opponent using Experimental Augury or Contentious Plan, and then these proliferation makes your mana rocks grow, like Pentad Prism and Everflowing Chalice, and it also makes your Hickory, Woodlot, Peat Bog, and Sapper's Zone Scary always just stick around and tap for 2. It's so much fun. Hopefully, if everybody's seen it, but if you haven't seen it, check out my videos. Now, getting into the super spicy, we have Mono Black Control or Mono Black Devotion by Bombage. I think they're out of Poland, and they've got the Trespasser's Curse in the main deck. Just a straight up MBC. 3 Sign of Blood. And then they've got Phyrexian Rager, Thorn of the Black Rose. Like, if you wanted to come in and just do that old school thing, this person got 2 trophies this week, which was sick. So congrats to them. And then the second in line for spiciness scale is this Mardu Affinity by Cha-Cha. It's CZA, and I think it's pronounced Cha-Cha. But essentially, they took out the blue for white so that they could play Dust to Dust. And then that allows them to Glinhawk pick up their Refurbished Familiar, which is pretty cool. I'm looking to record this hopefully coming up soon, so look out for that on the channel. I think that's awesome. Then we have probably the spiciest deck of the week, which is a red dredge deck. They're playing the Lotleth Giant and Dread Return. But to make it happen, they're playing the red discard spells. So they've got Insolent Neonate, Wildering Epicure, Scrapwork Mutt, Molten Gatekeeper. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield in your control, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. So they could like get that in play and then ping people out that way. It's interesting. And then they have Faithless Looting. So it's kind of very similar to dredge decks of like Modern and stuff like that. Sneaky Snacker is really cool with the draw 3s of Cathartic Reunion and the draw 2 of the Faithless Looting. I would love to play a deck like that. So that might be something that I'll try as well. And I know that Kerblinksy tried this, so I will link his channel in the description below as well. Now, the big news of the day is Teasdale posted and asking Gavin Verhey, are they going to talk about the format? When's the next update? And he replied at 5 or something in the morning, because he's in Taipei, that they have a video coming out next week. So that leads us to say, if they talk about the format, what are they going to say? Mostly, it looks like things are under control, not really out of whack as far as the challenges go. If you do continue to break things apart, one deck being 14% of the meta most of the time is not too bad. But then when you get a little bit more granular and you see that these macro archetypes are taking up a very large amount of the metagame, maybe that could be potentially a problem. So if you did want to make a change, what would you do? So the first and most obvious answer is no changes. They are probably looking at this relative balance and not worrying that much about the play patterns. People are very, very upset about Chrysalis and very, very upset about Glee. I know that some people don't like facing those whatsoever, so I could see those being things that people want to get banned. But overall, it's like, from a macro scale, fine. Now, if you decided to say, hey, I think that this stratification in the format is not great and we should be a little bit more balanced, from a what can I do perspective, maybe you'd have to take out things like Sadistic Glee here or the broodscale. Just cut that off completely, get rid of it. If you did want to nerf the Glee deck, you'd probably have to take out Chrysalis, because Chrysalis allows this Jund broodscale deck to be doing so well. I mean, we look at the top here. Jund Glee had 14 trophies, Black Green had 7. Jund also allows the deck to have a very large amount of pressure and a mid-range plan, whereas if you take that away, if you take the Chrysalis away, it won't have that anymore. From the affinity standpoint, I would have also always said that you could probably just get rid of the bridges. I know in the past, the Pauper format panel has been worried about losing the sweet interaction of wildfire, though I don't know if that it's necessarily important to keep that around. I think that if you were able to get rid of the bridges, you could unban a very large amount of cards, and or just like make affinity more of a deck that requires certain sideboard cards, but every sideboard card in the format would be able to deal with it. And by that, I mean every color in the format has sideboard cards that can blow up artifact lands, making it more of a glass cannon deck. I think that if you did get rid of the bridges, you could unban certain things. And if you got rid of all the artifact lands, then you certainly could unban all the affinity payoffs, making it one of those things where it's a synergy deck. So you could potentially just play a bunch of artifacts and get your 4/4s into play that way, which would be pretty cool, because Pauper has been a lot of the time based around synergy when nothing is really outstanding broken. When you move down to mono red, yeah, I mean, mono red has been a force in the format for a very long time. The most recent change was the Clockwork Percussionist that got added. I don't know that that's like a bannable card specifically, but if you look at the name of the deck, it's usually Kuldotha Burn. And if you wanted to get rid of that specific interaction, you'd be looking at something like Bushwhacker or the Kuldotha Rebirth itself. Now, whether or not that's necessary to take out is up in the air, but if you get rid of the go wide strategy of it, it might make the deck a little bit weaker to Hydroblast, which could potentially make it more balanced within the format. I think that mono red has always been an overplayed deck in the Pauper leagues, mostly because it's very, very linear to pilot, even though when you do pilot it, the interactions and the decision making can be quite difficult. I know that I played mono red in a league and probably punted quite a bit. So from there, I think that with the Terror decks here, the clear answer, if you actually wanted to get rid of that large scale stratification, would just be to get rid of Tolarian Terror. We have the Cryptic Serpent as a backup giant 5/5 or 6/5. You could put Cryptic Serpent, Sneaky Snacker, and Delver into mono blue anyway, and still have a very, very strong deck. But I don't think that that's something that the format panel will do. If you want, leave me a comment in the description, or not in the description. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think should or should not be done. I'm excited to see what happens. Obviously, ban discussions are always a hot topic. I don't want to say that anything should or shouldn't happen, and we'll see what happens. So maybe on the next video, I'll have an update. Thanks for watching. We'll see you there.